Right, Peter? Peter was in my workshop, or in my writing group for a while.
You were a rich bit at that.
Thank you. I try to be brutal every chance I get. Okay, so the real question isn't can we teach writing, which of course we can, because we do, but can creative writing be learned? And I took this off. The University of Iowa's writing workshop is I think it was the first official degree program, degree granting program in the United States. I think it was 1936 or 38 when the workshop was founded. It's one of the most prestigious. They graduate people who become poet laureates and Nobel laureates. And so they have quite a celebrated faculty and graduates and so on. But I thought it was really interesting. So here's sort of the premier writing program in the United States, maybe in the world, and they say right up front, we don't know if writing can be taught. I think what they mean is we don't know if writing can be learned. If you read further on the website, they talk a lot about how they attract talented people, and they help talented people hone their skills. But they don't talk about teaching writing, which I think is really interesting. I think it's accurate, too. So yeah, if you have talent, they say we can maybe teach you something, or maybe help you hone your talent. So I have some definitive anecdotal evidence. This is Brent, who's not here. He's another ChiZine author. Said this to me the other night when we were having beers. He's been through, this anonymous person.
That's not a real beer.
Yeah. But he said, yeah, he went through this Concordia, I believe, the program at Concordia, and he said, we all know when we walk into a creative writing workshop or a course, who's got the goods and who doesn't. And I agree with that. Like no one has ever surprised me. And I think that's like a talent issue. So I think he was speaking to that when he said that. So what can we do in a workshop? I think you can learn a few tricks, right? So if you've ever been in a science fiction creative writing workshop, you'll know the as you know, Bob. And of course, any creative writing workshop, show, don't tell. And don't put a gun on the mantelpiece unless you're going to use it in the last scene. And then Connie Wilson, my all-time favorite, she talked to us about, when I was at Clarion, about the delayed fuck, which is a very good way of building tension in a book, or in real life. Okay, so being a teacher by profession and having developed a number of courses and had to put together course outlines and developing new programs, mostly technical programs, I've had to wrestle with what we call in the business learning outcomes. And if you're going to offer a course, so if you're an academic, you probably had to wrestle with learning outcomes. Learning outcomes measure what learning has happened in a course. So I thought, okay, I'd like to think about creative writing courses in terms of learning outcomes. And so here are the characteristics of a good learning outcome. It's a concise one-sentence description. So it says you must be able to observe the thing that the students have learned. You have to be able to measure it. And the learners have to have done this. So I think you can see, I think you could probably write a learning outcome for a creative writing course that hits the third one. But I can't see how you can do the first two.
I can.
Jenny, go ahead.
Format.
Format.
You can teach formatting.
Right, but I don't see that as creative writing.
Yeah, but it's useful if you...
You can, specific outcomes that have to do with technical details or tricks, yeah, you can probably do that, but I challenge you. In fact, I was going to say, I'll leave it as an exercise for someone to come up with a good learning outcome for a writing course that has to do with writing, creative writing. So if you can come up with one, I'll come back next year and say I was wrong.
Publication, yeah.
Publication, yeah.
Or, better yet.
But creative writing workshops don't teach publication.
Or better yet, I have in fact, when I've taught, seen people who could not tell a story in an intelligible way get to a point where they could tell the story they wanted to tell. And it was usually only one story. They came in with this story, and they were obsessed with it.
Well,
You know, they could tell that story in such a way that you could understand what the fuck was going on.
right. No, I totally agree with that. And measuring the outcome. And someone said publish it, right? If it gets published, it's, you know. So I occasionally teach a science fiction course where I'll offer the students the chance to do a piece of creative fiction instead of a longer essay. But I tell them, I say, you can't get an A unless your story is publishable. But that's the only measure I could come up with in terms of grading it. And I don't teach creative writing, of course. I just say, if you want to do it, go off and do it. So anyway, yeah, I think but come up with, like, write out a couple learning outcomes for me.
Those were that.
You got nothing to do later today, right? Okay, so yeah. So I think it doesn't, I think that speaks to the issue that these courses are not teaching things that are learnable in many respects. So what can be taught? I believe you can, someone mentioned this earlier, you can teach people to be better critics, to critique, yes. So there's your slide. What I've learned in the workshops I've taken is how to critique other people's work. If I learned how to apply that to my own work, it happened long after the fact. And I think that's true for most people. That when you're in a workshop, if it's like a 13-week course or something, you go in week 1, your story's critiqued, you critique other people's stories, you learn a lot about their writing, and but it's really hard to apply that to your own work, I think. And I've seen that over and over again in workshops where some people are awesome critics, but they can't apply the same critical standards to their own work. So I think what creative writing workshops can legitimately do is teach you to be a better critic, which means you would be a better reader as well. So I think those are two reasonable goals. I took a comedy writing workshop with this guy at Hunter. He's won like 7 or 8 Emmys, and he's done a bunch of shows down the States. And, he's a Canadian. He just returned to Canada. And so he offered this week-long course at Humber. It was very cool. But he began the first class, he walked in and he said, "Criticism is a gift." And I was like, huh? And I really believe this, and I believe that's the proper goal of a writing workshop, is to want to be criticized and to accept the criticism. And I think that's something you can learn in a writing workshop, how to accept criticism. And people who are criticizing your work are spending time, right? They're putting themselves out there. You should thank them for it. I found this when I was doing Googling stuff. I'd forgotten, like years ago, I had a friend who worked at Toronto Life, and she called me up one day and she said, "You've taken a lot of workshops?" I said, "Yeah, a few." And she said, "Do you mind if we actually have someone call you and ask you?" Because they were going to do a supplement on courses, adult education courses around Toronto. And I didn't realize I'd been thinking about this in the same terms since 1998, but apparently I had, because they quoted me as saying that I believe you can learn critiquing skills, but not writing. So that's kind of my bottom line here, is that I think that's really what we learn in creative writing workshops. So, okay, but today, so I also realized as I was doing this that I like writing. I'm a workshopaholic, and I may well take another workshop. I haven't in the last 5 years taken a workshop, but I do, every once in a while I'll see a glossy brochure, or I'll see a picture of a Clarion class, and I'll start, thinking, oh, gee, maybe I'll take another one. So what value do they have? So I think it depends on your expectations. I think part of the problem here is I think we're not selling these courses the way they should be sold. I think we're a lot of people, certainly not all these courses, but a lot of these course offerings talk about helping people to start writing, helping people to develop ideas. And I think, no, you can't teach people how to have good ideas. That's sort of a crazy goal. But I think if people have a passion for it and a talent, that you can help them hone their skills, possibly. That's possible, but I'm not convinced in the space of a brief workshop you can. And certainly I think you can teach critiquing skills. Because I've seen that in many workshops where people's critiquing skills have improved tremendously. Self-assessment is very, very hard. People don't change easily, and they certainly are reluctant to be critical of themselves. They're much more generous with other people. Other things of value, though, it's not just writing, learning writing, but becoming a better reader. It has made me a much better, in fact, in a sense, it's made me a worse reader because I often will pick up a book and I'll put it down because I can't stand it. I think it's so poorly written. But I learned that in the writing workshops. Learning how to assess other people's critiques, right? Peter used to get teary when I did my critique, but he learned to take it like a man. But yeah, you have to learn how to judge other people's assessments of your work and whether there's any value in them or not. I think that's a skill, and that actually I stole from Brent because he mentioned that as well. He said that was one of the things he learned. Meeting like-minded people, forming writing groups, I think all of those are valuable. A lot of the websites for these creative writing programs talk about lifestyle, community, culture. They use these terms as well. And I think there's some legitimacy in that. Finding a mentor, good. Some people do that in these workshops. And writing workshops have a lot of chicks. It's true.
So if you're interested in that.
I did actually meet a woman in one of these writing workshops, so. But I really wanted to learn how to write. Am I cured? Well, once an addict, I was an addict. But since ChiZine's been publishing me, I no longer feel the need to attend workshops. So anyway, I thought, thank you, Sandra and Brett. And if you're interested, I've got a 12-step program for recovery if you're a workshopaholic like I am. You could read that at your leisure.